So these benefits of working on our posture are a multitude. The posture, how we are in our body, how we hold ourselves, is related very much to our emotional state, to our digestion, to how we perceive the world and how we are being perceived by others. And if you've ever done anything like acting training, you'll be well aware of that perhaps, or Alexander technique. I'll mention that a little bit. That's a postural technique that was initially actually developed for actors. And Mr. Alexander already realized that how we hold ourselves affects, for example, our voice. And if it affects our voice, then it affects how we would be being heard by others. So it might go a little deeper than we at first realize. So we'll start with lying down to be able to let go of our dance with gravity. One of my teachers said that our relationship with gravity is really like a kind of partner dance. And without gravity, we wouldn't even be upright in the same way. We'd be floating through space. And it's a dynamic process. Posture is not static. So often in yoga, we hold a pose for a while and we notice our breathing in it. Might be in warrior pose for a while, for example. And in daily life, that's quite rare. We're usually moving in some way, moving one part of our body. Maybe it's just our hands or our fingers. And there's something going on. There's some movement. There's some flexibility. So we're looking to have a good structure, a good alignment through the bones, and the muscles in a good fit state to support the bones in that structure. And then also the flexibility to dynamically respond to this dance with gravity. So when we lie down, we can let go of all that. It's resetting the posture, like pressing the reset on a computer. And you can start off by noticing whether it's more comfortable to bend your knees or not, and whether it's more comfortable to rest your hands on your torso with your elbows on the floor, or perhaps your arms on the floor with your palms turned up or down. And this awareness and the choice that follows it can already give you some information about how your body is. And you may not know exactly why one is more comfortable than the other. At least you know it's more comfortable. And then for a few breaths, allowing our body to relax. In the book I'm using at the moment, Stack Your Bones by Ruthie Fraser, she says right at the start that awareness of the structure of the body is to experience it, to experience the basic structure of your body as a human and as an individual. And I've touched on that before. So we are human beings, so we're all very similar in that respect. We have much more common with other human beings in common than we have with jellyfish. And we're also very individually shaped, so our bone structures will vary somewhat. They are also different in men and women, particularly the pelvic structure. as we age, we probably get a little bit of compression in the spine because we've been dancing with gravity for however many years. Babies' bone structures are very different from adults. So we can see in our body over time probably an increase in asymmetry. So as you rest on the floor, I regularly invite you to notice, how is your relationship with the floor, which is partly about your relationship with gravity. How is your body resting on the floor? Is the left side more in touch with the ground than the right? Which parts of you feel heavier than other parts? And then we can notice throughout the class or sessions or over the time that you do these practices whether the symmetry of your lying down posture increases. And it's okay to a level to be asymmetrical. And again, the older we are, the more asymmetries we probably get from any kind of one-sided activities that we do, sports, using a computer mouse, having one dominant hand, injuries. And we can do some work to try and rebalance the symmetry in the body. Because especially for stronger asymmetries like having a limp, the body needs to compensate. The relationship, the dance with gravity is changing if we don't have full use of one foot or leg or hip. And that compensation will create usually some kind of asymmetry in the body, which over time can create discomfort. So notice also if it feels good to be weight bearing as you're lying down. Does it feel like easy? A felt sense that gravity is helping you in this posture. Gravity can reinforce your capacity to relax and find ease. Good, and then we'll start with some movements. A little bit more undoing first, as it were. And we're going to begin at the head today to drop down to the feet. So sometimes we have this separation, as it were, between the head and the body. We're very much in our thinking mind, analysing logic, etc. We can get a kind of barrier almost at the level of the neck and shoulders. So it can be really helpful to start by relaxing our face. And you might like to check whether your hands are quite warm, maybe warm them up a bit if they're cold by rubbing your palms together. And then gently stroking your face. So you can start with strokes and being quite gentle. And I was reading this morning in The Guardian, we have special receptors in our skin, neurological cells that respond to stroking. and it can be very soothing to be stroked. So we can start with stroking and maybe noticing, oh, I like stroking my forehead or my cheeks, or my nose is cold. My nose is often a bit cold, so I like to warm it up. And then perhaps it's also nice to do some firm strokes or massagey movements in front of your ears, down to the jaw, down to the neck, or anywhere else where you get a little bit tense around your face, forehead, temples. And you can also make the shapes of the vowel sounds with your mouth to help relax the jaw. You can make the sounds if you like, or you can do it silently, going A, E, I, O, U. Maybe just pulling some funny faces as well to stretch these areas of our face that are used a lot for communication. And then whenever there's, like I'm having just now, a natural inclination to perhaps take a deeper breath and sigh or yawn, that's a sign that we're releasing some of this held rigidity in the body, sometimes called armoring, muscular armoring, which is very normal. It's kind of the face we put on to the world. And then we can focus on our breathing for a moment, maybe placing one or both hands on the center of the upper chest, breastbone, and as you exhale, really encouraging the breastbone to sink, softening there. And then letting your arms find a comfortable place to rest on the ground again. Maybe your hands on your upper chest with your elbows on the floor, or lower down, or your arms out to the side again. And then letting your head fully rest on the ground, so perhaps for a couple of breaths, fully feeling the weight of your head on the ground or whatever surface it's lying on. And if you use a cushion normally, or a yoga block, in Alexander technique they recommend something relatively hard like a block or a book, so that you can become aware more of the weight that's going down through the bone structure of your head. And the ideal height for that is a couple of fingers width. So it might be something to explore if you do this again. And then with your exhalation, letting your head do a small roll to the side, breathing in back to the center, and then an exhale to the other side. And keeping it small will really work on the muscles right at the top of your neck, where your head sits on your neck, the occipital joint. So if you keep it small, it's more likely to release there. We'll do some bigger movements later. So starting small, encouraging your body to let go of the weight of your head. Staying aware of your out breaths, and change the movement to being tiny circles with your chin. about the size of a 50 pence piece or a €2 coin, something like that. A circle you could make between your thumb and your index finger going to the middle joint of your thumb. Just indicating that on the screen. So a small circle. Again, less is more here. And as you do this, still being aware of exhaling fully with this sense of letting go, allowing your breastbone to release. Changing direction if you haven't already. And then bringing your head back to the center. And then becoming aware of your feet. Bending your knees if you don't have them bent yet, so that you can stand your feet up. Stand your knees up, as it were. And doing the small Feldenkrais movement, another therapeutic movement practice I do a lot, which is to exhale and draw the lower back towards the floor so your tummy muscles contract, and then breathing in, arching your lower back away from the floor so you're creating a little bit more of a gap underneath your waist, and flattening on the exhale, arching on the inhale. And again, doing less than you know you could do. So maybe half of the movement you could possibly make, 50% or so. And you might feel your head tilting slightly up and down with this movement as well. The chin is tilting up and down, the head slightly rolling along the vertical axis. Again, it might all be very subtle and small, and that's great at this point. That's what we want. Lovely. And then coming back to resting for a moment and checking out the symmetry or asymmetry that you might be noticing between the left and the right side and how you're connecting to the floor. If it's comfortable, straightening your legs for a moment to release the front of the hips. And then bending the knees again. Noticing how that changes your relationship with the floor as well. And then bringing one knee up to above your hip and your foot at about knee level. So your thigh is making a right angle with the floor and your torso, and there's a right angle at your knee. And you're probably noticing a bit of core strength happening to keep your leg in that position and to keep your lower back fairly flat to the floor. It doesn't have to be completely flat, bit of a natural arch, but not going floppy. And then on an in-breath, letting your knee go out to the side, and on an out-breath, bringing it back. Breathing in, going out to the side, not going far, not to the floor, keeping your pelvis very stable and steady, so you're only going maybe a few inches. And if you were starting to roll over, that would be the point to come back. Doing up to 6. So inhaling out to the side, exhaling back to the starting position. Notice if any other parts of your body get involved to keep you stable. And when you've done up to 6, bringing that foot back down, straightening that leg for a moment to let it release. Noticing the difference in the body when we allow gravity to get hold of us again and we relax with it, compared to doing these movements where we're creating some force against it. And then bending that leg again, bringing the other leg up into these right angles. Holding it, drawing your lower back a little bit closer to the floor if you can to engage your core. Noticing the effort of this compared to just relaxing. And then inhaling, taking your knee out to the side, keeping the pelvis very still. Exhaling back to the center. Up to 6 times. Noticing if it feels different on this side. Maybe this side feels a bit stronger or smoother. Up to 6 repetitions. And then bringing the foot down, straightening the leg, and letting this leg really relax and release. If it's comfortable, then also straightening the other leg and noticing your symmetry in your relationship to the floor. And then contracting the buttock muscles very strongly. You can also make fists with your hands. Holding that for a couple of breaths, as tightly as you can, and noticing how your breathing is when you bring this deliberate contraction into your hands and buttocks. And then slowly breathe out and release. Maybe this changes the symmetry of your body. Repeating, contract, hold. And there might be a tendency there to hold your breath as well. Notice that. Notice how your breathing changes. And then gradually release the contractions. And notice what you do with your breathing. Let's do that once more. Make fists. Contract the buttocks. Notice the breath and slowly release. And relax. And then drawing the knees in, hugging the knees in towards the chest. Taking a rock from side to side, you might want to hold your knees or place your arms on the floor to anchor you, and rolling your head in the opposite direction of your knees. Make this movement as little or as big as you like. So noticing how it feels on your spine, your neck, your hips perhaps. Maybe it feels nice to roll a bit further. Are you still giving in to gravity through your head, through your shoulders and through your hips? Then coming back to the center, flattening your lower back towards the floor, and on an out breath with bent knees, slowly releasing your feet to the floor, and then probably feeling your core relax when your feet land. And placing your arms by your side with your palms down, pressing your hands into the floor a little bit. It's not so much pressing as making good contact between your palms and the floor. And then pressing down through your right foot and your right hand and release. And then your left hand and your left foot and release. And doing this a few times to each side. Pressing the same foot and the same hand on each side, same side. Down and release. And noticing that when you press down through your hand and your foot, probably your shoulder and your hip slightly rise. So from the downward movement, we get an upward movement. So this is becoming a dance with gravity. Lovely. And then you can relax the arms, maybe shuffling the shoulders about a bit, and then resting on our elbows so that the hands can be off the floor. And then pressing down through both feet and both elbows. So you might go into a bit of a mini bridge and feel a bit of activation between your shoulder blades. A different kind of activation from when you press down through your hands. No need to go up high. Again, just see how it is for you. Less might be more. It's initiating the pushing down to initiate a movement up. And then when you next come back down, folding the knees in towards the chest again, taking a rock from side to side. And this time letting your head go the same direction as your knees. So you might hold your knees or take your arms to the side. See what feels more interesting for your body. And then coming back to the center and taking your feet up towards the ceiling and pressing up through your heels. You might need to bend your knees a bit or hold your legs. Imagine pressing your feet up against a ceiling, a lower ceiling. And you can also, if you're not using your hands to support your legs, imagine pressing the hands up against something. Extending up, pushing up through the hands and feet, and maybe feeling a kind of stronger connection through the back and the floor, an activation somehow between the back of the body and the ground as you push up. And then letting that go and coming into a relaxing lying down position, either with your knees bent or your legs long again. How symmetrical or asymmetrical are you now? And then roll onto one side. You might want to take a breath there. And then coming up to all fours or elbows and knees. So this is where I've got my blanket for a bit of sliding capacity. So if you've got anything to hand that might work better than your yoga mat, you can do that. Or if you've got like a slidey floor around you, we're kind of going to take our feet quite wide, so you could just let your foot be off the side of your mat. So you could be in this position as well. Or even with your hands on a chair or the edge of your bed might be more comfortable for you. And we're going to see about sliding our foot around a little bit. So drawing a quarter circle, I guess, with our foot around our body. Just realised my black socks are kind of invisible on that blanket, so I'll do it here for a second. So sliding around, your leg fairly straight, and you might go a bit further forwards, a bit further behind you. You can change sides at any time. If you find this quite challenging, you could do one or two on one side and one or two on the other, then have a rest in child pose. Maybe release your wrists, alternating between doing and resting. And that really can be very helpful as well if you're a bit low in energies this time of year, or recovering from illness or injury. And And if you notice one side is more challenging than the other, consider doing a couple of extra repetitions on that side. So moving to the last few repetitions now. Choosing which side you want to finish with. And then coming to child pose with your knees quite wide, your toes together if you can. And you might rest your forehead on your forearms or even your head in your hands. Resting with a little bit of hip opening. And then coming to kneeling or upright kneeling for a moment. And just taking a look at the screen for me to demonstrate the next movement. So again, a bit of a slidey surface is helpful here. We're going to see how it is to lie on our front, and if it's not comfortable, I'll give you an alternative in a minute. And it's kind of like a climbing movement, but on the floor. So I'm going to straighten out my left arm and my left leg. It might look like the other side on the screen. And then on my other side, I'm bringing my knee and my elbow together. And you might be more comfortable looking down. I'm looking up a bit to project my voice. Looking down or rolling your head from side to side, because then I'm going to change. My slidey blanket is quite nice here. It's moving around a bit, but so it's like a climbing movement. And my weight is largely staying very supported to the ground. If you're not comfortable lying on your front, you can do something similar on your back. You can lengthen out through one side and contract on the other side, keeping your lower back fairly flat to the floor. So it feels really different on your back, and it might feel a bit less comfortable on the lower back doing it on your back. So you can try either and see how it is for you. And again, doing 3 to 6 of these movements on each side. If neither really works for you, then you can simply rest on your front or on your back. Pause and notice your breathing. When you've done up to 6 of these movements to each side, and taking a rest, resting on your front or your back, maybe coming to child pose or bringing your knees to your chest if that feels helpful for your lower back. And then coming to upright kneeling. your shoulders a little bit of a movement, roll one shoulder then the other, so we're working a bit with that asymmetry in the body, rolling backwards, rolling forwards. And then interlacing our fingers behind us, stretching our arms back a little bit, tucking the tailbone under, a slight lean backwards. So it's a bit like a camel pose, mini camel pose. Maybe feeling a stretch in the quads. And then letting that go and stretching forwards. And a bit of a shake through the arms and shoulders. And then mindfully coming up to standing, noticing how you do that. So arriving in mountain pose after doing all this kind of strengthening and releasing work on the back, the hips, the shoulders, the head. Kind of work down to the feet in a way as well, kind of, or indirectly coming down the body and then doing some of these integrating movements that inform particularly our walking posture. So now coming to standing still, and we can do a few mini squats, which are a great way to let go of the airs and graces that we might bring into our standing pose that aren't really so helpful. So first checking what your weight distribution is like from left to right, because this might be where asymmetry starts, favouring one foot, doing something like this. Even to a small extent, maybe it's not as obvious as that. Taking your weight from side to side and noticing how that feels. Does it feel somehow more familiar to bring more weight onto one foot or the other? And can you distribute it a bit more evenly? Same with forward and back. Coming to a place where you sense that your weight is really well supported through your ankles into your heels on the left side and the right side. The arches of your feet are supporting you. And then bending the knees, so there's a sense of dropping the tailbone down. And then extending the wrist, so you're lifting your fingertips up to flatten the palms of your hands, pushing down through the hands and straightening the knees. Noticing the contraction that happens in different parts of your body as you do that. And then letting it go again into the mini squat, which is a straight down movement. So I'm not taking my head forwards, my head's still above my hips. I'm just dropping down via the knees, relaxed hands. And then pushing down through the hands and straightening up. Noticing how that is, and then relaxing. Doing this a couple more times, making the movements smaller and subtler as you go along. So that you're finding your middle way of standing, which is released towards the floor through the legs, that sense of pushing down towards the floor simply with your weight to enable a relaxed upwardness coming from the downwards connection. And like a miniature, super subtle version of pushing ourselves up in bridge pose. Seeing it how it is to stand still like that. I read a bit from Stack Your Bones. In a standing position, feel the weight of your body. Does the weight of your body feel grounded or solid? Does that groundedness or solidity feel good in some way? Where in your body does it feel good, if anywhere? Does it feel uncomfortable anywhere? Maybe too heavy or too much effort? Can you do anything differently so that it feels better? So you might be able to make some gentle adjustments to improve your body's structure. Be aware of your feet again and your heels and your arches, which are the structures that really support your weight. Letting go of excess muscular effort where you can. Coming to a place where you can feel the force of gravity as a nourishing asset in standing. And notice how you're breathing. And start to make some little movements again, so similar to the one we did lying on the floor. Let's stretch one arm up and then the other one. So again, a bit like climbing, just with the arms. Reaching up, you can also make this movement with your hand. And reach up as little or as far as you like. So you might just go to head level. You might reach higher. Looking up, reach and release. Reach and release. So if we're picking an apple from a high branch, reach and release. And we can do the same with the legs, and you might need a bit of support for balance. So taking a leg up and then the other leg quite high, walking on the spot, taking the knees forwards to begin with, like a kind of marching movement. And it's okay to wobble. Remember that the wobbling is the place where we're learning to rebalance. We're really training our vestibular system in those moments, our inner ears, as well as our proprioception. So if you're holding something, see if you can do that in a very light touch way. So supporting yourself with your hand as little as you can, relying as much as you can on your balance. And if it feels okay, you can move to lifting the knee in front and then out to the side and then down. So almost a bit like a tree pose movement. You could make it a bit smaller to work more on your balance. See how that is for you. And then if that's sort of relatively easy, then you can do the movement we did on the floor, standing up. So it's quite hard for me at the moment because of my poor balance. So one side reaches up, the other side is contracting. So knee to elbow and the other side up. And this side is challenging for me, recovering from injury. So see how you go. You might just do it a little bit. Like me, I'm doing it a bit more gently to maintain my balance. Notice how you can also use your core here to contract, and the sides of the body, of course. Find perhaps a comfortable rhythm that's not too fast, not too slow. So again, that it might be a bit like climbing with confidence. You know where your hands are going. Excellent. And then coming back to standing, and stacking the bones, comfortable standing. Noticing your breath and seeing if you can again be a little bit soft here, for want of a better word, not collapsing the head forward, so we're still nice and upright, the bones stacked over the feet, and this area able to relax down on the exhale. So in other words, we're not rigid here like this. This is a bit of an exaggeration, like most people wouldn't stand like this. But there's a responsiveness here to the breath. Slight lift on the in-breath, slight lowering on the out-breath. And the belly able to breathe. It's the lungs that are breathing, but the belly able to move as well on the in-breath and out-breath. Noticing how it is to stand like that with your gaze forwards, looking out into the world. And then seeing if you can take a few steps whilst keeping your gaze open to the world, and this similar sensation in your posture of well connected to the ground, aware of the ground through your feet, aware of the space around you, relaxed through your shoulders, looking around your space, moving your head from side to side a little bit, feeling the ground with your feet, letting your shoulders and your arms relax. When we walk outside, we can practice this walking outside and can keep our gaze ahead on the horizon. And sometimes we do need to check for obstacles, is the pavement even, etc. And then when we've kind of checked that out, we can look out into the world. So often we rely a lot on our eyesight when actually our proprioception, our feet, our ears, they can pick up loads about our balance and the position of our body. If we train it, sort of retrain it, we often lose that a bit. And I see myself, I do it myself, I see other people doing it as well, hands in pockets maybe, and looking down and walking around like that, which is kind of closing off the perception of the world a lot and stopping the body from moving naturally. So you could try the difference for a moment. I don't actually have pockets in this, but pretending I have my hands in my pockets and looking down, and walk around like that for a moment. How does that feel? It might offer you some benefits, because you can see the floor, you can check the ground. Notice how your spine and your shoulders, your arms, neck and head are a bit more rigid, so that's the cost. And it might also change your mental state slightly. Maybe it feels a bit more low mood almost, less energetic, whatever it feels like to you. And then going back to more upright position, loose arms, gaze out, letting your head move, letting your shoulders move. I'm speeding up that way as well, even though I'm not checking the ground. I'm feeling more confident to speed up and kind of walk in a more normal way. Normal, whatever that means for me. And then coming back to standing. And then lifting our chest up a little bit. So we've kind of explored this in the walking, and then upright and relaxed. And then we can deliberately lift from here. So this might be a way that we've been taught to stand in physical education or the army, drawing the shoulders back, stand up straight. Notice what that does to your spine, to your head and neck. Your gaze might be going more up. again, there might be something about it that's quite nice. And you can walk around like this. Maybe it feels a bit more regal. Looking up. What does it do to your overall walking? How is that feeling in your body in terms of how comfortable or sustainable it might be? And also the subtlety of your mood, your mind state. And then coming back to standing. Let that go, coming back to neutral. Maybe again doing a little squat, keeping your head upright, pushing down through the hands, engaging the core and staying in neutral, so we're not going there, and then when we relax a bit we're not going there, so we're in between what we might call, well, it's a forward bend. Some people call this collapse. Forward bend, relax, and up and out, extension of the spine, so in between neutral. And again, sometimes we want to go into extension and we want to go into flexion because it does afford us something. So in terms of a yogic standing pose, we can do this now. We can take a breath in, spread our arms out, extend. And then on an exhale, we can release down to a forward bend and let go. It might feel really helpful to the body to do this as an exercise, as a movement, to keep our spine fully moving, to contract and stretch certain muscle groups. And then coming back after the last forward bend, do another forward bend if you need to standing. So we want to know these different polarities of being very extended up and out and very curled up and down. And most of the time when we're interacting with the world and with other people and we're walking, being in a neutral, fairly open stance, where the bones are stacked, where we've got this natural alignment, where we can look forwards and outwards into the world without creating all sorts of strange positions in the body we then have to compensate for, or rigidities. And also here and here, if we were holding that for long periods of time, you probably noticed there was more rigidity, and if we stay here, we're breathing very differently from here. So you can check that out again. How is your breath affected in these different ways of standing? And it would be similar if you took it into walking. It would be similar if you were sitting down, a bit collapsed, or a little bit too much like this. It affects our whole system, from our mental state to our digestion to our musculoskeletal system. And inviting you also this coming week to observe other people. It could be people you know, or people when you go for your daily walk, which you're hopefully doing, and noticing how they're standing or walking and what the impression is that you get of them based on that. And remember, that might be wrong, because they may have some kind of spinal condition and they may not be super enthusiastic or feeling sad based on, whether they're a bit like this or like this. But just noticing what your impression is. And also, if you know them, you don't say to them, oh, you look really like this because you're always sitting like this. That might sound a bit harsh. But just taking note of it yourself. So how do you perceive people based on their posture in movement, walking, sitting and standing? Because it's, again, often perceptions we have in common. And if you have done any acting training, then you'll know that. And maybe you've heard of power poses and how politicians are training in those. So, they come across more powerful, and more confident and more trustworthy. You can hear my voice changing a bit as I make these different movements because they affect our whole being. So we're going to bring that into some of the more familiar yoga postures soon as well. Like, how would this affect a warrior pose, for example? And for now, you're invited to, in any case, to let it all go again. Create a nice lying down nest for yourself again, perhaps with some extra blankets. Stay warm, stay comfortable. And this is also something that affects our posture, temperature. So if we're feeling a bit cold, we're going to contract, which then kind of draws our circulation into our torso, takes it away from the extremities. And actually the best thing to do would be to move if we're cold, and to relax and move. But it's usually not the response we make. So when we're trying to do a deep relaxation, a comfortable temperature is important. So do take a moment to sort that out, and I'll do the same. So getting settled. Again, letting gravity be a nourishing force in the posture you've chosen for this practice, sitting or lying. As you arrive back on the ground or a comfortable chair, wherever you're doing this practice, is there anywhere in your body where the weight that you're bearing through your bones to the ground, maybe via a piece of furniture, is there anywhere in your body that feels the ease of that weight? How your body weight can actually bring you a sense of ease. awareness of structure, solidity. Because it can be the awareness of that structure and solidity inside of us and outside of us that enables us to relax with gravity, to let it be like a comforting blanket in its own right, in addition to the blanket you might have over you for warmth. And knowing that you're in charge because you have enough strength to move against gravity, to take that blanket off to enough of an extent that you can move, and still it's going to keep you down to earth. You're not going to float away. Being aware of any pleasant felt sense of heaviness that you can sense in your body. And also acknowledging that it perhaps doesn't feel comfortable in the whole body. If your sacrum feels uncomfortable on a hard floor, and maybe you want to pop a cushion under your pelvis or roll onto one side. Can you relax your shoulders and your upper chest? And your belly. Noticing how perhaps your breath has changed again. And the natural breath, the effortless breath, is different in lying than it will be in standing. What is yours like right now? Is there any way you could ease your breath? Perhaps relaxing your throat. Relaxing abdominal muscles. Letting your arms and shoulders, their weight, relax into the floor. If you are lying on your back or your front, what does the touch with the ground tell you about your symmetry? Has it changed? And let's spend a few moments expanding our awareness into the whole body by starting at the head again, noticing your face, eyes, tongue, relaxing your eyes and your mouth and your tongue. Releasing your head to the floor, relaxing your neck, your shoulders, your arms. Releasing your back towards the floor, noticing your spine, your ribs, your lungs, your belly, pelvis and hips, your arms and your hands resting. Your legs and your feet resting. And expanding your awareness to notice your inner space and your body, your skin, everything inside your skin, between your head, your ears, your fingertips, and your toes, and the soles of your feet. Noticing areas of ease in the body. If there's areas of unease, discomfort, is there anywhere you can relax a bit more to perhaps ease a little bit of that discomfort or unease? Noticing increased ease or symmetry in the body is important, even if it's just a tiny bit of a positive change. Noticing it informs our nervous system. Oh, this is good. It's like clicking save. Save this to my muscle memory. It'll be easier to find it again in the future, making a a neural map of it, a new habit. And noticing how you are overall. Maybe your mood's changed a bit, maybe your energy levels have changed a bit. Perhaps you're simply more aware of how you are. And if you're ready to interact with the world again, you may wish to do that first through one of your senses, maybe hearing sounds around you, or opening your eyes to notice the light in the room, or your sense of touch, feeling the ground, moving your hands across your clothes, or massaging your face again. Maybe coming back to gently stroking or rubbing your face, or your thighs. And then it might be helpful to wake you up a bit more if that's what you want to do or need to do. To stretch a little bit more, to extend your spine, to breathe a bit more deeply. To open your eyes. And then take with you this intention of being aware of your posture and how you move, observing yourself with curiosity this week throughout your daily routines, and see if you can find a bit more comfort in your way of being, to perhaps change and change for the better how you are within yourself and how you interact with the world.